to different destinations. Please approach the YouTube gate.
Dear colleagues, a very good day to you. C'est un grand plaisir de participer à cette conférence en Algérie, mais je ferai ma présentation en anglais. And I will do my very best to keep the presentation within the stipulated 8 or 10 minutes. And a more detailed account can be read in the conference proceedings. A lot of studies deal with the intersections between heritage tourism, economic development and marketing. And especially the 1990s saw an increase in this sort of research, which coincided with a boost in European regional funding programs. And probably more than elsewhere, the EU provided many case studies with measurable inputs, at least the financial ones, and some qualitative outputs, a situation that created a few important syntheses on heritage-based community building. And some of these outputs were classically econometric or managerial in nature, whereas others explored cultural and political and sociological dimensions as well, with a focus on the vertical relationships between tourism and cultural heritage, from the core concepts of authenticity, sustainability, commodification, and marketing. And so in short, the economic impacts of local heritage commodification have been studied at micro and regional level, and always come to the conclusion, or almost always come to the conclusion, that endogenous products, local products, and services are beneficial to the distinctiveness of a tourism mix. And so the assumption of local heritage creating economic development through tourism has become the backbone of national and regional cohesion plans. Globally, for instance, the UNWTO insists on the rise of a growing cultural heritage potential. And this sounds good, of course, but we need to keep in mind that tourism development and economic growth are not necessarily symmetrical. Indeed, empirical studies suggest that this is not always the case, and that economic performance depends on a combination of tourism production factors in the different national realities. A tourism growth correlation has, however, become a dogmatic policy-making principle. For small cities and towns, this often means a balance between more or less passive free riding on larger regional strategies on the one hand, and setting up the possible, the feasible municipal plans on the other. So it is in most cases hard, very difficult to cultivate a strongly distinctive local brand that is attractive at a supra-regional level. In the case of the United Arab Emirates, for instance, heritage components have been incorporated in all main development strategies at all levels, at emirate, federal level, and the same happens in Portugal, both at the central and the municipal levels. But the fact is that consumers and providers really do not think of heritage as a controlled production unit, and rather as an unregulated asset, something that just exists on its own. And a major concern is that the production process itself is not well understood. Heritage is taken for granted, both as a concept and as an economic multiplier, but only when conveniently commodified or monetized, if you want. And so many studies do demonstrate the successful integration of cultural tangibles and intangibles in the tourism product. A museum, an archaeological site, a culinary festival, or a historical city center naturally enriches the leisure experience for a visitor, for a tourist. And this is an intuitive conclusion, but also empirically verifiable to a certain extent, and has generated this idea that you find all around the world, this idea of massive contributions to national GDPs. And for decades, this has led to the injection of public monies into heritage in virtually all regions with coherent development plans. And the subjacent principle is that financially stimulating forms of local identity leads to community engagement and then to grassroots entrepreneurship and ultimately to a better distribution of heritage-based wealth production. And so this sort of fisherman's cane makes sense and has proven useful in the product enhancement, but the resulting ecosystems become self-sufficient only with great difficulty. And very often they create operational challenges, operational structures that remain deeply dependent on public subsidies. Becomes very visible in Oliveira das Meias, which is a municipality in the Porto metropolitan area in northern Portugal. A medium-sized city, it has an essentially uncharacteristic image of heritage and tourism in terms of integration of the tourism mix. For instance, very few people will associate Oliveira das Meias with a specific heritage component that is unique enough to be distinctive or brandable at a larger than local level. Heritage conservation has been at the center of successive municipal directives, namely in the field of archaeological excavation, for instance, and archaeological integration in the tourism product. So despite certain lack of distinctiveness, Oliveira das Meias does count on its own heritage tourism offer, in particular the La Salette Park, the Ferreira de Castro Museum, and the Mill Park at Ul. And this latter, the picture you see in the middle there, the Watermill Park, has been marketized based on a number of restored mills that symbolize traditional activities, especially the ones connected to local bread produce, so typical bread. And this gastronomic specialty can be tasted and bought, is presented as a unique local product. La Salette, on its turn, associates a religious and leisure dimension to a hilltop park with a neo-Gothic chapel and a religious festival that has created steady dynamics of tourism attraction. The figure of the writer Ferreira de Castro is a third branded element, and theoretically his museum and literary work, of course, may be transformed into a niche product in terms of tourism. As for the archaeological heritage, it has not been heavily commodified. Some sites are visitable and they are accessible by public road. And the most well-known of these is Ould, adjacent to the watermill park, which confers an interesting potential for a day trip. So, briefly, the present and prospective elements of heritage attraction are authentic and relevant, but they yield only moderate rates of return. To assess the effectiveness of the full branded image through the lens of a potential international visitor attraction, there were a couple of studies were conducted. The first one was a survey on 62 respondents having visited European destinations but not Portugal before, and they provided their feedback. The majority either strongly agreed or agreed on statements about Oliveira das Meias offering distinctive cultural experiences, comparatively less expensive cultural experiences, being a safe and comfortable cultural destination, and the expectation of heritage attractions being a major part of the tourism experience. Looking at the results, there seems to be a favorable yet undefined perception on Oliveira das Meias as a tourism destination, cultural heritage tourism destination. In other words, there is no fundamentally negative opinion and also no specific remarkableness of other sorts of pull factor. A fine-tuning of these responses was done qualitatively through short interviews and confirmed two main impressions. On the one hand, local cultural heritage is a factor for international tourists, and on the other, smaller destinations lack distinctiveness for those same international tourists to build expectations on. So the primary focus for Oliveira das Meias is not international, and it is the domestic market that remains central, as one infers from most markers. TripAdvisor feedback, for instance, reveals an almost complete domestic nature of visitors. Some reviews written in English come from Portuguese and even local residents, the latter presumably attempting to encourage and stimulate their city's tourism. Another indicator is the result of a questionnaire to local residents with the purpose of maturing the municipal plan. And what stood out was the significant hesitation or unfamiliarity with local cultural resources. Further questions did confirm a lack of awareness of specific heritage components, despite the majority of these respondents stating heritage is important to their local community, namely in terms of tourism. This, however, seems to remain an abstract principle and more than a clear take on how such importance would actually become a reality or materialize. In a very, very dissimilar environment, Al Ain is an inland city in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, offers completely different heritage resources and faces other geographical development challenges in terms of cultural heritage and their development strategies. Its cultural sites are inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List and include a combination of oases and archaeological elements. Both the UNESCO classification and also, by the way, the criteria for the FAO, Globally Important Agriculture Heritage System, have a considerable impact on development of territories such as that of Al Ain. In fact, investment in this local heritage from the perspective of sustainable integrations has been deemed important and immediately recognizable from the consumer side through a handful of distinctive iconic resources, and this means forts, gardens, a mountain, Jebel Hafid, and oasis. And so the desert scenario in itself provides a uniqueness for heritage tourism development, and it includes even a zoo with increasing satisfaction levels. The city image of Al Ain is a construct that includes tourist attractions as an immediate cognitive reality, but also as an emotional one, interlaced with local quality of life, residential infrastructures, and others, for instance. From this angle, investing in positive heritage experience around attractive areas. Alain National Museum, it has the Central Oasis close to it or adjacent to it. The Green Mubazara on the slope of Jebel Hafid. The geological and archaeological features. All of this is a definite factor for socio-cultural development. The Abu Dhabi Department of Culture and Tourism includes a number of Al Ain heritage attractions in its strategic vision. The Al Jahli Fort, for instance, is viewed as both a historical structure and a venue for cultural activity. Substantial investment has been made at the local World Heritage components, with more than 140,000 visitors to the sites, which is a fraction of the visitors that come to Abu Dhabi or to Dubai, and the creation of a desert park combining heritage with outdoor a straightforward but unprocessed way, if you want, to tap into some level of visitor experience is the feedback on sites such as TripAdvisor, again, or others, similar sites or similar platforms. Despite all the issues regarding, or the warnings regarding online comments, whether or not they are representative, the main idea is that the park has tipped more towards family leisure activities and is perhaps less appealing an asset to the occasional Western visitor with a predefined idea of what an archaeological park means. And this is an issue that is totally unrelated to the quality of the scientific research or to the World Heritage criteria. Feedback ranges from 5 to 2 stars for different reasons, and the least encouraging ones have to do mainly with preconceptions and projections by first-time visitors on what an archaeological park is expected to look like, as opposed to consumer patterns evidenced by returning visitors who seek leisure setting and not just like cafeterias and gift shops, something you see very often in the museum industry as well. So to commodify a site is to make tough choices always, not only on preservation, but especially on what we can call the packaging, that is the product to integrate a tourism mix. This will always please certain segments more than others, and in the case of Hilli, the strategic choice is to favor a local leisure integration that ends up creating a tension with non-residents and their expectations. And the challenge for DCT Abu Dhabi is to balance both dimensions by exploring complementary services that may satisfy international centric-oriented tourism demand as much as community life. And so the overlapping message here is that heritage becomes sustainable only by letting it transform, by allowing new meanings to otherwise pointless objects and spaces. We cannot and we should not attempt to obsessively preserve cultural elements as if they were part of some external world, and if by using them instead we change them in the process, well, that is okay. This is the way heritage becomes economically sustainable instead of. Strategic options for heritage-based differentiation are limited and should be stimulated through collaborative communication. The operational dimension for a small administrative unit and the ensuing success is limited to the supra-regional level. Micro-scale analysis based on car travel within a few dozens of kilometers fail to correctly identify preferences related to extended family dispersion, hospitality, specifics, and place of residence of regional visitors. In the Portuguese case, consistent communication campaigns are mainly generated by Turismo do Norte, the regional tourism board, in an attempt to provide coherence to an essentially very dispersed heritage supply. Oliveira das Meias is geographically much closer to Aveiro, which is considered central Portugal, than it is to Porto, administratively located in the north. A visitor of Oliveira das Meias might more easily start or end their day in Aveiro, mid-sized city as well, close to the coast, with which the landscape has more affinity and continuity than in Porto. Similarly, Alain is a city in Abu Dhabi, but is slightly closer to Dubai than to the capital city. It is also a border city with the Sultanate of Oman. And the distance to the Omani coastal city of Sohar on the west coast of the Arabian Peninsula is in fact even smaller than to Dubai, but the administrative and geographical discontinuities represent interruptions in the coherence of an experience. And so this is not measured in physical distance, but in perceived units. So it's not about how far it is, but how easy you reach it and how coherent the landscape is. I'm looking at the time here. I'm perhaps going to move forward a bit more. And basically, this next slide is about correctly dimensioning cultural supply. And it calls for appropriate data, of course, and more upstream even the factors that produce the data. And these factors are less volatile than you and I might presume, and they relate to long-standing social structures, leisure habits, education, and other demographics that generate parameters that are hard to alter. You cannot change them very easily, and they configure the community dynamics. And these community dynamics are precisely what makes heritage, what makes a destination unique. So what cultural heritage is or not, and what it can do and cannot be used for, depends on the context, on the specific context that you are working on. And some degree of international distinctiveness would depend on a very specific niche experience that in the best case scenario may result in only marginal demand. And so you can build a niche product, but it might not yield enough return on investment or a satisfactory return on investment. So to finish this presentation, I'm taking quite some time. I apologize in advance. A couple of final ideas. Despite the large differences between theory and practical applications in a specific municipality, some common principles can be identified. So first and foremost, cultural heritage generates indirect and induced effects in the local economy. Everybody agrees on that. And part of this revenue can be reinjected in the heritage sector through private initiatives, conservation of natural and built heritage, or the social well-being and the local pride that ultimately enhances the quality of intangible heritage. Second point, municipal heritage promotes a uniqueness that depends on factors that are supra-municipal, on a framework that you do not control, roads, airport infrastructures, the success of national tourism agency campaigns, competing attractions as well, heritage and non-heritage in nature, and many of the production factors are not controllable by local ambition only. Finally, the heritage resources that function as building blocks for development need to be valued by local communities in the first place before any marketing investment may generate a quality return. If such a primitive, primal connection does not exist, the very concept of heritage becomes perverted, even if archaeological sites or historical performance are well commodified. Heritage always requires a social articulation with local dynamics, which is why outreach and education need to focus on local realities more even than on the prospective tourists. And thank you very much for listening. It was a pleasure presenting these ideas on heritage, on local tourism development from the municipal perspective. And I'm leaving our email addresses should you wish to comment on any of our observations. And again, I apologize for slightly taking more time than I was supposed to. Thank you very much.
Hello, greetings of the day. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity for this presentation. My name is Dr. Jitesh Kumar. I'm a senior lecturer at School of Hospitality, Tourism and Events at Teles University, Malaysia. Also associate director at the CRET Services Center at Talis University, Malaysia. Thank you so much. The topic for this presentation is the domestic tourism as a pathway to revive the tourism industry in a Malaysian context. What exactly is happening? Why we are focusing more on domestic tourism? Is all about the COVID-19. So before I give you some details the why domestic tourism is important compared to international tourism, or why should we have little more focus in the current time because of pandemic or without that also, we don't know what is the level of pandemic at the moment. But one thing is confirmed, that this is not the only pandemic we have seen. Tourism industry have seen or got shocked or got disturbed due to several other pandemics in a real manner. So I will be giving you some aspects of pandemic, before pandemic, different other aspects of different disasters also. I will be having some comparison, and then I will come to the actual point of domestic tourism, and what's the story of domestic tourism in Malaysia at the moment during the pandemic, mid of pandemic. So let me give you some details of what exactly happened to the tourism industry and how pandemic have disturbed our industry badly. Tourism is back to 1900 level as pandemic hits travel actually. Yes, this thing is, one thing is very much clear, that this is not the only first pandemic. We had a financial crisis, we had a SARS, we had other sort of epidemic or some disaster, natural disasters also, H1N1 also. But tourism industry, it was not that badly affected, but COVID-19 have hit very badly. Now, like, we are back to the 19th century actually, where we have started from 400 million actually, and we are back to the same level, or when slightly lower than that also. So due to that or some other reasons also, domestic tourism should be in a picture, because international borders are closed and we have lots of new protocols which we have to follow. We have to follow several SOPs, etc, etc. Some details of last year or 2 years back, when pandemic started in 2019 first quarter, and then 2020 actually. But if we compare with the last year, which was 2021, it's actually totally different. We were expecting in 2020 that 2021 will be much better, but actually it went much more worse than 2020 also, because 2019 first quarter, when pandemic hit, it went to the zero, or all the figures, arrival, receipt, everything was in a negative actually, because we are more into travel. But what we saw in 2020, yes, somehow vaccine was out, people were more allowed, not international borders, but somehow we can say within the Europe, within some neighboring countries, Asian countries, or the new concept of bubble travel was introduced, where the travel opened slightly. But in 2021, when we had a new variation of COVID-19, actually it hit worse, it hit very badly compared to 2020, and then it went more worse. But then we had a booster vaccine which can give us some enlight, some motivation that yes, we are almost reaching, there will have some end of pandemic, or we will find out some suitable way to live with it actually. Then, of course, as mentioned earlier in the previous slide, that COVID-19 hit very badly, and there was a downfall of 74% in inbound tourist arrival in 2020 actually. So from 2019, it went down all the way to zero figures in 2020. The current scenario in the tourism industry is when exactly we are expecting that we will be back to the same level of 2019 in several countries. So UNWTO have conducted several researches throughout the world actually, and they found out the 49% says that we are going to reach 49. For Middle East mentioned that 49% we will be achieving this level very soon actually, And if we talk about Asia Pacific or Europe, they mention 36%, America is 14%, and throughout the world is a 1% actually. Also below the bar you can see the number of years actually, that which year we are going to reach this. 2024 or later, that was a 49% given by Middle East actually. But if we talk about Asia Pacific and Europe, 2023 means not this year even actually. So 36% mentioned that we will be reaching only next year somehow to the same level of 2019, same situation of 2019 actually. But still we are not sure, because we cannot really predict for what's happening, because all the sudden there is a new variation actually, new variant of COVID-19. Booster vaccine is also very effective in if I talk about Malaysia actually, millions of people are vaccinated and millions are already got booster, means a third dose of Pfizer or some other brand. But the thing is, borders are not open. Just yesterday night, the Prime Minister have confirmed that by 1st of March, international borders will be open. But again, it's a terms and condition applies. We don't know that borders will be open for entire world or some particular countries, some safe countries. Some is it a travel bubble for the neighboring countries? We don't know what's going to happen actually. So that is still on a 1st of March, and today if we say it's the 10th or 11th of February, so still there are number of days actually which can influence this decision actually, which can change this, which can showcase, which can force us to change this decision also. Going further, if we talk about the current scenario of tourism industry in a worldwide, actually the traveler must prove their travel history, that where are they coming from, where they have been recently, and who they have been with, where they were staying, and so on. So these are the new questions actually which we must have the answer if we want to travel. It's not only the visa and the passport or the valid ticket is required, or your bank statements, and you are affordable to travel in a particular destination, but along with that you have a new vaccination passport also, vaccine passport also, that card which confirms that you are vaccinated, and to avoid that quarantine durations, and so many other things which are newly introduced due to this COVID-19, which we haven't seen earlier ever. Then we have social distancing is being enforced in the different airport and flights. Of course, well, these are the new motives or the new factors which push us away from international travels actually. Of course, there is a scary part that we all are scared if in case we got stuck in a new destination because of COVID-19, because of those quarantine and so on, which really increase the price of our travel also. No touch facilities have been introduced. This is something is good. There is always pros and cons of everything. Technology has been introduced very drastically. Something which we wanted to have or which we are supposed to have in next 5 years, we already achieved in these last 2 years because of, we can say, thanks to COVID-19 actually. Hotel booking windows are very shorter. Earlier we can book for the next 6 months, next 1 year, or for the next year also I can book today. But now it's very short. Just book for the next month or next 2 months only, because when we book we don't know. Several things were booked, but the lots of cancellation have been seen, or because of this lockdown, like MCO, EMCO, RMCO, so several lockdowns, movement control orders were introduced in different countries also. Domestic air travel has started to recover. Yes, slightly countries have opened domestic tourism, like different states and different cities are safe to travel within the country, but it is not everywhere actually. Establishing better health safety and accepting digitalization. Well, no touch screens is all digitalizations, plastic money, credit cards, QR codes, those are valid payments excuse me, valid payments, and all those are accepted, are very well accepted actually. It was very common in China specifically, like roadside stall person also can accept the money through QR code actually, but it was not that accepted in Malaysia or in other countries, even in the developed countries actually, everywhere, even at the different outlets. So now it become a new norm, or it become a ritual that we have to follow it, otherwise we cannot survive in the industry. Tourism Malaysia, domestic tourism could grow 30% over next 6 months to a year actually, because as mentioned by the UNWTO research which was conducted, we are expecting next year, or in next 2 years or next 3 years actually, that we will come back, this tourism industry will recover. But when we compare the domestic tourism with the international tourism, why domestic tourism should be in a focus, or why it is in a focus, because it come back to the normal very fast. It doesn't requires much time. People doesn't require much time to plan for travel, how we need to plan for international trips actually. So of course COVID-19 have hit very badly to the domestic tourism in Malaysia, and it's like, you know, with once in a 13 years that we went in a reverse in terms of domestic travel actually. It started from 2008, then 2013, 15, 17, 19 actually, until 2019. Can you see the figure is upgrading, the scale is going up actually. But in the 2020 the figure went down all of a sudden. But of course it didn't go to the zeros or those scratches what happened to the international travel actually. So somehow still it's safe, but still a number of stakeholders couldn't survive. Even a five-star number of five-star hotels also shut down. Nice restaurants also shut down their businesses. Travel agent, well, they were already affected due to the OTAs actually, but now due to pandemic they couldn't survive in the industry, so they also shut down. But domestic tourism is growing very fast, and the last 6 months government have opened all the states, and I have seen that people are traveling. We were locked down for 8 months consecutively, 8 months in a house actually, because there was a MCO and we couldn't go, we couldn't travel actually. Being a tourism a lecturer, I like to travel actually, because when I travel I see several things and I use those examples in my classes actually. But 8 months is too much, and when after 8 months they open the borders to travel within the country, within the 1 month I traveled to 4 different states. But of course, the very first the decision making factors have been changed. Earlier affordability was one of the major concern, but now secure safety and security or the traffic become the first and the most important concern to choose the destination or a place to stay. Domestic tourism driving the recovery in your destination. Somehow this is another report, research conducted by UNWTO actually throughout the world. Several destinations mentioned yes, some said partially, some said no actually. So domestic tourism, so as you can see in the dark blue color actually, majority of the countries mentioned yes, that domestic tourism is one of the path which can influence, which can help us to recover the tourism industry faster. We cannot wait until the international tourism is open or the borders are open and so on. And due to the pandemic actually there is a shift in trends, a shift in demands, a shift in travel demographics actually. Earlier everyone was traveling for several reasons before pandemic, but now it's focused actually. Not everyone like to travel, or not everyone is allowed to travel actually. Senior citizens are those with a high risk or control actually, or we can say the millennials or the new generation, they are very free to travel, and of course travel to those destinations where they are allowed to, or those are open, or those are safe, etc. Travel and tourism sustainability become very focused. Wellness, spa, we become very health conscious also. Well, before pandemic, not this trend was not that common, but after pandemic or during this pandemic actually we all become very health conscious. Travel security and risk resistance, well, it was resilience. It was also not everyone's spoon of or we can say cup of tea, but now it become very common. And if we go further in a detail actually, as you can see in this the circle diagram, there are several industries actually which got affected due to the tourism industry got affected, because tourism industry is the one which is taking from several industries. So we can say, if you look at the economy as a whole, several industries are directly or indirectly contributing to the tourism industry, and when the tourism industry get affected, actually those all get affected. The concept of revenge travel also become very common, like just now I mentioned the example of I was locked for 8 months, and when I was allowed, means when MCO was lifted, I could travel to different states of Malaysia. I took the revenge. I went here, I went there, I went to the 4 different states within a month actually. But that was not my trend of travel actually. Probably after every 4 weeks, 6 weeks we used to travel, but within a month to 4 different states, it was quite hectic. But we were having high hope. We were quite eager to travel actually. And this is good as well as bad also, because COVID-19 uh, is, well, is opportunity or crisis actually. It depends on the personality, that how do you take actually. For some businesses, for some individual, it become opportunity as well, like different businesses as well as the destinations, because destination themselves went on vacation. There was no traffic, there was no congestion, there was no littering or the throwing rubbish actually. So the destination, the islands were taking a nice breath, and they were getting ready to give us more in a future, and we have achieved that, we have absorbed that actually. So we don't need to put the different islands on maintenance mode, how we have seen in the Philippines. The young generation, this is the new trend which I have discussed in the just earlier slide, the circle diagram. The young generation or the millennials are more who are traveling, or who have seen the different who have seen the picture in actual, compared to the different generations in one go. Localities, rather than going overseas actually, we have traveled in our localities, in neighboring destinations, or with domestic tourism become very common actually. I have seen number of people who haven't traveled, they don't know much about their own country, but they have traveled to several international destinations. So this is the time, or due to the COVID-19, they have explored their own country, they have explored their own local destination as well. Travel will involve nearly destination. Of course, economy travel will recover more quickly. It depends that is it affordable or not. But eventually, it's a general practice. What I can see, the research mentions that due to the pandemic, the travel become more expensive. Flights are cut down, and now whoever would like to travel, they have to pay extra. The quarantine fees is there, and some more we have to do this PCR test, COVID-19 test here and there a few times before departure, after arrival. So that is also a cost which increase our overall costs. Outdoor nature and wellness related destination are very common, rather than going to the shopping malls or those closed and congested places. There is another study was conducted by UNWTO which mentions that what type of tour, or people like to travel solo, people like to travel in a group, small groups, huge groups, what we used to see earlier. Self-guided tours are very common, likely some mention definitely, some mention likely, definitely for self-drive and self-guided. So self-guided means they want to go by their own, drive by their own. They don't want any driver. They don't need any sort of tour guide or anyone who can help them to explore the destination. And a group of guided tour, well, still there are some who would like to travel in a smaller group, probably a family, or those well-known people actually who are coming from the same family or same community or same area actually. Guided tours or cruise tours are not those in focus due to the pandemic. and this research was conducted at the global level actually. So this gives us a picture that people are very conscious about their safety, security, hygiene, more towards the wellness. Where are they going, what are they eating, what are they doing, and they are very conscious about their health. So these all were the motives actually why the domestic tourism should be in a focus, and why it have been in a focus recently, because it won't take much time like international tourism to bring back the normal situation what we have, what we were having pre-pandemic in 2019. With that regard, thank you so much. These are my connecting contact details. Actually, you can connect me on ResearchGate, LinkedIn, social media. Also, you can explore my TLS University portal account. With that regard, thank you so much. I wish you all the best and stay safe. Thank you.
Dear organizers, dear participants, and dear colleges, greetings from Turkey. I would like to mention about myself briefly. I am Dr. Gül Erkol Bayram. I am working as associate professor Department of Tour Guiding at Sinop University, located in Sinop, Turkey. My research area is tour guiding, tourism management, tourism planning and policy also. Today I would like to talking about tourism industry during COVID-19 and beyond COVID-19. My research topic is mostly related with current situation of tourism industry during COVID times, and what is the measurements and controls by COVID-19, and what will we do after pandemics? What is the new road of tourism industry, especially Turkey tourism, and what have we done in the first time of COVID-19, and after finally we have a conclusion. Yes, my topic is as you see on the screen, learn from the past, COVID-19 and beyond, the case of Turkey also. As you see, firstly, I would like to mention about my aims of making this paper. Firstly, I would like to reveal the current situation of tourism industry post-COVID-19 and determine some future strategies and positive scenarios for Turkey tourism beyond COVID-19. As everyone knows, COVID-19 has a big effect on tourism industry around the worldwide. For example, especially in developing countries or underdeveloped countries, we saw many negative aspects of COVID-19, sometimes it is very difficult to solve some important issues related COVID-19 and the tourism industry. So it is so important to make positive strategies and policies and planning related pandemics and beyond this time. A qualitative approach was used on behalf of our aims in this study. Within the scope of study, related literature, especially COVID-19 in Turkey tourism, was reviewed. According to literature reviewed, it is possible to divide 4 parts of Turkey tourism, and maybe 3 parts, past, present, future, and maybe we can divide to future in subtitles. For example, in the near future or also in the long future. Firstly, pandemics effects on tourism industry, and we can say different parts of aspects affected by COVID-19 on tourism industry. Firstly, we see some increased border guards and country entry and some restrictions also. And also we saw imposing mandatory bans in places where the disease is detected. In order to reduce the contagiousness of the disease in social aspects applied. In order to reduce the contagiousness of the disease in social spaces, applied disinfection studies, and we saw curfews, and we saw travel bans in tourism industry. We saw some suspension of training activities, festivals, concerts which are held with many participants around the world has been stopped because of pandemics, and congress, fairs, etc. suspension of cultural and artistic organizations came to halt, and postponements of airline flights was very usual activities during COVID-19 times. And in Turkey, there are many affections of COVID-19 to tourism industry. Many sectors, subsectors, for example, restaurants, accommodation, airlines are going through a very difficult period in Turkey. Turkey has also adapted to the measures and some measures taken on a global scale. In February, some bans were imposed on passenger transportation from some countries in Turkey. After the first positive case was seen on 10 March, quarantine practices was used. As of June 1st, some of the bans have been lifted on the new normal period has started also. There are some results after COVID-19, and I think we learned some prominent conclusions after COVID-19 times. Firstly, I would like to say that Turkish economy is also heavily dependent on some major services such as tourism industry, and tourism industry can be divided 3 main parts: accommodation, food and beverage, and transportation services. So some important steps and measures taken by the governments and the plans and policies during COVID-19 times, because as I said before, Turkey economy is mostly related with tourism industry. There are some measures of accommodation management in Turkey. Firstly, guest records were kept regularly. Rooms and closed areas were meticulously cleaned. Sauna, massage parlors, gyms were not used, or a limited number of visitors were received. COVID-19 training was given to staff and control some precautions by staff. The room of guests diagnosed with COVID-19 was kept empty. And another measures for food and beverage management can be seen possible. Social distancing measures were taken. Tables were determined according to the capacity of COVID-19 measures, and rules were posted in the guest visible areas of the restaurants. Temperature of the guests was taken at the entrance to the restaurants. Hand disinfectant was available at the entrance. Guests who has without mask were not accepted to the restaurants also. And the last one is some measures for transportation management. Entry and exit from some countries to Turkey are restricted. International and domestic flights have been suspended for certain periods. Intercity travel is prohibited due to curfew. Escorts of those who want to travel with the Turkish names Hayat Eve Sığar in the English name Live with Song application were obtained. COVID-19 measures were hung inside the buses. Hand sanitizer was placed at the entrance to the bus stations also. After COVID-19, we learned and we take some conclusions, and we are on the way for tourism industry. So it is possible to express some opportunities and risks beyond COVID-19. I would like to mention especially some opportunities beyond COVID-19 that Turkey's success in combating the virus compared to many other countries has increased the confidence in Turkey's health sector. So many patients maybe will come to Turkey on behalf of Turkey's positive health process and their confidence to many patients. An increase in individual activities is expected due to escaping from crowded environments and social distance awareness. An increase in demand is expected from traditional tourism understanding to alternative tourism types, for example, health, culture, sports, nature, eco, rural, winter and mountain, and congress, faith, plateau, gastronomy, tourism also. And the desire to avoid crowds can increase demand for less populated natural areas. It is predicted that the mobilization in national tourism will be faster than international tourism also. It is known that it will lead people to be more sensitive about health and environment, and some approach such as sensitive, responsible, for example, ecotourism or sustainable tourism will be popular after COVID-19 times also. The tourism industry has been affected by COVID-19 in two main ways. Firstly, some travel restrictions have prevented many national and international tourists. And the second one is individuals who were dismissed or whose jobs were disrupted due to the COVID-19 could not participate in tourism activities. The total number of tourists in Turkey in the first 11 months of 2020 decreased by 72% compared to the previous year. The first way to overcome this situation is to mobilize domestic tourism activities. The concept of social distance created by COVID-19 is embedded in many activities of tourism. Hotels receive fewer visitors, while newly built hotels built in the style of bungalows or villas for 1 or 2 persons. Tourists from many different ages and nationalities are now on vacation on the farms. The frequent occurrence of domestic tourism movements in the COVID-19 process has brought local actors to the fore. Yes, that's all my presentation. Thanks for your listening.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Zarwati Mawahib from the University of Farhat Abbas, City of Algeria. I'm pleased to be part of this conference about tourism economy in Algeria, where I will be discussing from a relational perspective some of the challenges and opportunities for improving the Algerian hotels institutions services. We cannot deny the fact that Algeria is a country known with its rich and diverse cultural and intangible heritage. However, this potential is not enough for Algeria to be a competitive destination. In fact, it was ranked 116 out of 114 countries by the 2019 Travel and Tourism Competitiveness Report issued by the World Economic Forum. And while there are attempts to improve this situation, and as part of its national strategy for tourism development, Algeria adopted a tourism management scheme, Outlook 2030, which mission is to promote the tourism and face the major challenges slowing down its development, such as economic, employment, regional and local development planning, cultural and image improvement challenges. And in this presentation, we are going to explore and discuss at a micro level the major challenges that face the hospitality sector in Algeria, as well as pointing out the main opportunities for eventual improvements in the Algerian hotel services based on customers' perspective. While as well we will investigate how do customers of the Algerian hotels perceive the service quality, do they have positive behavioral intentions toward their hotels, what might be the motivations that lead them to continue dealing with their current hotels, and finally how can hotels managers take advantage of the customers' feedback in order to refine and to improve their services. So in the empirical study, we targeted regular customers of hotels established in Algeria using a questionnaire, and the final sample size was 173 respondents. A descriptive analysis using SPSS software was conducted on perceived service quality and loyalty, while a content analysis by means of lexical approach was performed on open questions. The results indicate that the respondents are globally satisfied with the levels of service quality provided in their hotels. They have also positive behavioral intentions towards their hotels, which means that the better the service is provided to customers by the hotel staff, the higher their loyalty will be. And in order to investigate the aspects of the subject, we addressed open questions where the respondents have the opportunity to answer with their own words rather than express their opinion in scales. Therefore, we transformed the respondents' answers into standardized general themes. Then we illustrated them into word clouds for better visualization of the qualitative data. The principle is that the larger the volume of the word, the more often it was repeated in the responses, and thus the more important and prevalent the theme is. So the results indicate that the hotel's location was the top criteria for the respondents when selecting the hotel the first time, followed by the provided services and the cleanliness and some other aspects less repeated in the word. The service quality is the aspect that motivates the most the respondents to return to their hotels, while the promotion were the last. The location appeared as the top additional feature offered by the hotels to their customers, which indicates that the respondents insist on the importance of the hotel's location. On the other hand, others did not observe anything extra offered by their hotels and mentioned the word nothing. The majority of the respondents would not reconsider changing to another hotel in the future for the main following reasons: for satisfaction, for the consistency of services, for the trust towards their hotels, for the excellence, the comfort, the location, the quality and the habit, and many other aspects less frequent in their responses. On the other hand, the respondents who stated that they would reconsider their hotels in the future, which represent 26% of the sample, justified it mainly because of the decline of the services each time they visit their hotels, the availability of alternatives, the high prices, for comparison reasons, and for their desire to change. These findings can help the managers and practitioners to better understand a part of the elements that can help improve the provided services and driving forces for better customer behavioral intention within the Algerian hotel industry. So we will formulate them as follows. First, to focus on the hotel's location, because studies prove that it is very crucial to invest in the hotel's location, because it will increase the market share and the profitability and thus directly affect the hotel's success. The second point is that the hotel managers should invest in a staff that keeps providing consistent levels of services. Therefore, the best hotels know that they must find appropriate people who can be trained with the skills necessary for effective service delivery and motivated enough to be performant exceptionally. The third recommendation is to not take the customers for granted, because the results of this study showed that although some customers entertain long-term relationships with their hotels, they are willing to move to another hotel if the alternative was available, and thus the hotel must investigate the reasons for such intentions, especially that maintaining customers is more profitable than acquiring new ones. Also, the repeat patronage doesn't automatically mean that customers are loyal. In this regard, hotels need to differentiate between attitudinal loyalty and calculative loyalty in order to be able to identify the right profitable customers with whom it will be possible to develop long-term relationships. The next point is to develop special bonds with the customers, because fostering mutual and beneficial long-term relationships is the core philosophy and goal of the relationship marketing, which identifies service quality, the trust, the commitment, and the communication as important factors in creating customers' loyalty. Accordingly, these factors are essential for retaining customers and for the success and the survival in competitive markets. The last recommendation is to be innovative and always add value when providing services. Many studies conducted in the hotel industry found that customers tend to be more loyal when they perceive high value. Therefore, the perceived value is not only one of the most successful competition elements, but it is also important since it affects the customer's feelings and buying intentions. From the other hand, service innovation is a concept that can be implemented to produce new attitudes towards improvement, new skill development, and new capabilities for service delivery. Some studies point to the positive influence of service innovation and technology on customer perceived value. For example, the use of technology applications can address customers' needs and preferences more precisely. I appreciate the attention you considered for this presentation, and I hope it was valuable as much as the rest of the conference topics will. Thank you and Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. My research is entitled Developing a Destination Management Plan, Algeria Case Study. The well-known futurist John Naisbitt, writer of many books, stated that there are three paradigm service industries that will drive the service-led economies of the 21st century: telecommunications, information technology, and tourism. This reference to tourism as a key driving force appears to be justified when considering the following tourism statistics provided by the World Travel and Tourism Council. The total contribution of tourism to GDP was estimated to more than $9,000 billion in 2019, which represents 10.3% of total GDP. In terms of employment, the tourism industry generated 330 million jobs in 2019, which represents 1 job in 10. On the other hand, the number of international tourist arrivals worldwide reached 1.5 billion in 2019, while forecasting it to reach 1.8 billion tourists by 2030. The travel and tourism industry is therefore considered one of the most important industries in the world, being a driver of social and economic development and a dynamic engine of employment. In this context, Algeria has all the assets to allow tourism to flourish. However, it still attracts a small share of tourists. This may be because tourism was considered as an unwanted foreign influence and an unnecessary industry for economic development, making tourism in Algeria primarily an internal activity. On the other hand, Algeria suffers from not having an adequate strategic vision, so to increase the competitiveness of the Algerian destination, it seems to be crucial to develop appropriate policies and strategies by implementing an effective destination management plan. Thus, the question can be expressed as, what is the proposed destination management plan to enhance the competitiveness of the Algerian destination and give it back the status it deserves? The aim of this research is to analyze the contribution of tourism industry to the Algerian economy and to elaborate and design an integrated destination management plan that can be used by public authorities and Algerian destination managers in order to enhance its attractiveness and competitiveness. For this aim, qualitative method has been used, relying on the case study approach. So first of all, let's begin with the contribution of tourism to the Algerian economy. According to statistics from the World Travel and Tourism Council, the total contribution of tourism to GDP was about 1,400 billion Algerian dinars in 2019. We can notice that the expected growth rate between 2018 and 2028 is low compared to the growth rate expected at the global level. In terms of employment, the Algerian tourism industry generated more than 64,000 jobs in 2019. In terms of visitor exports, Algeria generated 24 billion Algerian dirhams in 2019, and international tourist arrivals are forecast to total 4.15 million tourists by 2028. In terms of capital investment, tourism is expected to have attracted capital investment of 206 billion Algerian dinars in 2019. Algeria increased its investments in the tourist industry by a factor of 10 between 2005 and 2010, mainly thanks to its transportation policy, but the share of tourism investment has steadily declined since 2005. Based on these results and the literature review, we propose this destination management plan for the Algerian destination. This plan is composed of 8 elements as shown below. The first component is destination marketing management. We recommend to the Algerian destination managers a set of strategies and innovative marketing tools aiming at reinforcing the attractiveness of the Algerian destination. The first recommendation is to develop and build an integrated brand for the Algerian destination. In this case, we propose to position the Algerian destination by combining the elements of heritage, distinctive natural resources and hospitality with modernity. We propose also to develop territorial branding for each region or city, for example, heritage in Jmila and Tingad. Improve Algeria's image by launching promotional campaigns. Develop competitive pricing policies tailored to different target market segments. The use of discovery trips and the investments in new technologies such as e-promotion and e-commerce. Rely on the content creation strategy by developing and publishing content on the Algerian destination, and we suggest creating an official interactive website that can be called Visit Algeria. Establishing partnerships with global websites such as Google, TripAdvisor and Beautiful Destinations, and organizing free trips and making partnerships with opinion leaders and influencers. Developing promotional campaigns in the media. Attracting international film directors and participation in specialized trade fairs. The second component is demand management and target marketing. We recommend strengthening the domestic tourism by using dual pricing for tourist sites and by launching programs to encourage local communities to specialize in producing traditional products and introducing promotional offers on internal transport. On the other hand, results show that the main markets for foreign tourists visiting Algeria are Tunisia, France, and Morocco. China ranked first in terms of source of tourists in 2019, and that the most important source markets for tourists in 2019 are mainland China, the USA, Germany, UK, France, Japan, Canada, the Russian Federation, and finally Taiwan. So, based on the data collected, we suggest adopting a diversification strategy by targeting Algerians living abroad and by targeting foreign markets. The proposed priority markets to be targeted are the European Union, like France, Germany, and Spain, the United Kingdom, some North American countries like USA and Canada, some Asia-Pacific countries like China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea, and some Maghreb countries like Tunisia and Morocco. The third component is managing resources and capabilities. The Algerian destination manager should carry out a diagnostic by identifying and listing the most important attractions and then assessing its potential. The fourth component is ensuring a healthy investment climate. For that, we suggest conducting and expanding bilateral and multilateral agreements, providing incentives to tourism industry players, and removing bureaucratic barriers. The fifth component is information management and market research. Algerian destination managers should acquire statistics on visitor and tourist behavior, conduct market studies on tourist satisfaction, and acquire information on the economic, social, and environmental impact of tourism development. The sixth component is human resource development. We propose to carry out a diagnostic of current skills, then provide specialized studies in the fields of tourism, provide training courses by developing an interactive electronic platforms, and develop partnerships between the education and business sectors. The seventh component is crisis management. We propose developing a problem-solving action plan, and because effective crisis management aims to anticipate future crises and develop and implement preventive measures and prepare an action plan that includes a list of steps to be undertaken in. The eighth component is monitoring and evaluation. We recommend to Algerian destination managers to evaluate the effectiveness of major policies and strategies implemented to enhance destination competitiveness, and to measure and monitor the following indicators: total contribution to GDP, tourism employment, tourism performance, and visitor exports. Thank you for your attention.